right, welcome to WSQ 33. Today we're going to be talking about roots, stems, and leaves. So really we're going to be talking about the three main organs or organ structures of plants. Our big issue that we're going to address today, our big objective is what are the main functions of roots, stems, and leaves? What do each of them do and how are they purposed? We talked before that you can basically classify plants as the two organ systems, shoot systems and root systems. And today we're going to look at those, break those down into three organs. So let's start with the first one, and we're going to work our way from the bottom up. So we're going to start with roots, what a root is. Now, we know that roots are important to a plant, okay? And they're important to the plant for a couple reasons. We all know that roots grow into the soil. They're underground. And a root structure is designed in such a way that they really do two big things, okay? They absorb water. So we're going to look at first this one. They're useful for absorbing water. And, that's our first, minerals. That's in one. And for anchoring a plant to the ground. So if I asked you what are the two main functions of roots, that's it. Roots are important for grabbing water, H2O, and minerals, getting those from the soil, okay, and for anchoring it, right, working as an anchor, keeping the plant anchored to the soil. Now, how that happens, we have to understand a little bit of the structure of roots. And so let's take a look. I've got right over here on the right something for you guys to look at, which is a close-up view of a root and its structure. And let's talk about the different parts. The first thing we want to talk about is what's called the root cap. The root cap is down here at the bottom, okay? And the root cap is a portion of the root near the end of the root that's whole purpose. It's made of basically dead cells. And the purpose of the root cap is to protect it from injury. It kind of acts like similar to how, if you have a callus on your finger or how your nails kind of act as a protection mechanism. That's what the root cap does. It protects the root from injury, from rocks and different things as the root grows down into the ground. Okay, there's root hairs. You see coming off the side of the root, we have these little things called root hairs. Root hairs are small cells that extend from the root itself, and the purpose of root hairs is to allow the plant to absorb more water. This is just a function of surface area. Okay, remember when we talk about surface area of an object, the bigger the surface area, obviously the more moisture or water that can get absorbed at a time. Okay, think of it this way. If I have one straw in a cup, okay, then I have 10 straws in a cup, which one can I get more water sucked up at once? Well, obviously more straws, right? It's a larger area. As I can suck a larger amount of pressure. There's more water can go up at a time. That's the same thing with root hairs. We'll see this a lot when we talk about even the human body and animals. There's a lot of structures that God designed with their purpose to increase surface area. And an increase in surface area helps the processing of gases like oxygen, carbon dioxide to happen quicker, or waters, minerals, things like that. So root hairs are just designed to increase surface area, which allows more absorption of water. We look on the inside, we can see there's a couple structures. We have the vascular tissue, which is broken down into the xylem, which acts to move water up the cell. Okay, and that's going to be those internal cell structure right here in the middle. And then on the outside, we're going to have the phloem. The phloem is going to move sugars and food down from the leaves or roots. Remember this over and over again. Xylem up, phloem down, xylem up, phloem down. So those are the major structures of the root. The root cap, the root hairs, the xylem, and the phloem, which make up the vascular tissue. Those are roots. Stems. Now, so as we go up from our plant, we start at the roots, and then it's going to move up to the next area. And these are typically found above ground, but not in all cases. The stem is the structure of the plant that produces branches and leaves and flowers. Okay, the purpose of the stem is really a go-between, right? It carries substances between the plant's roots and the plant's leaves. So that's its first task. Okay, carries substances. All right, or I'm sorry, that's our second one. Our first one is produces branches, leaves, and flowers. And thirdly, it provides a support for the plant. And fourthly, it holds up leaves to be exposed by the sun. It brings them up to the surface. So 4 things that we see in stems. Okay, produces branches, leaves, and flowers, carries substances between plants' roots and leaves, provides support for the plant, and holds up leaves to be exposed to the sun. Now here's an example of a structure of a stem on our right. We can see the stem in the center. There's a couple things that you need to understand. There are vascular tissues that run the length of the stem on the inside, okay, and that would be the xylem and phloem, exactly as we saw in the roots. They have these structures called nodes. Okay, right here's a node. Nodes are where leaves attach. So every leaf will attach at a node, and sometimes at that nodes they'll have what's called a bud. And a bud is where new branches or new leaves or new flowers can grow. Those will always happen at a bud. And so it's really important when you prune. I just pruned my roses for the winter, and you have to prune your roses back to right above a bud, and that actually helps to make sure that you get spring growth. You're going to get increased growth in your plant. Now, one thing about stems that we can learn about, and we're going to talk about this in more detail, is they can be herbaceous or woody. Herbaceous stems are soft green stems. So this one on the right would be an example of a herbaceous stem. All plants, trees included, start with herbaceous stems. Okay, even trees, if you notice, new growth that comes off a tree when it first starts is green. It's a herbaceous. It's very soft. Over time, in the case of woody plants, that xylem will actually harden out, and you'll get wood-like stems, like we see in oak and pine and poplar and those types of trees. Okay, some plants stay herbaceous all the time. You think of some of the green growing plants that your mom might have, certain flowering types and stuff where their stems stay green all the time. Some plants, they turn woody, like roses, as I talked about. Now, woody stems, I just want to put this up for you, and I don't expect you to write all of this down, but I want you to understand the structure of woody stems. Trees have woody stems, and you can really break it down into these 6. Okay, there's 5 actual levels or elements of it. They're made up of layers. Okay, the layers of xylem over time, see in the center here, these annual rings. Okay, those are actually each year a new layer of xylem is produced. They can go and look at a tree, and they can cut a tree out in half. They can look at the stump, and they can see what the seasons were like. Really, really tight rings usually is a symptom that, hey, there was maybe some drought that didn't grow really quickly. They can see where maybe there was fire and damage to the tree. And they can actually count back, and scientists have been able to use trees and cuttings of trees to determine all kinds of information about an area and certain types of weather patterns and things like that, just by looking at tree rings. So the inside, we have annual rings, which represent each of the year's growth. Okay. Then you have the center portion is the heartwood. This is the old inactive xylem that helps support the tree. That's the strength of the tree. It's the inner core. Then you get into the sapwood. The sapwood is the active xylem. This is where nutrients are actually transported at this point. Okay, and so that's sapwood's really important because it's still getting water up to the tree. You have the cambium, which is this in-between layer in bark where it's actually producing living phloem on the outside, and it's producing living active xylem on the inside. So you get this kind of cool process that's happening. You have the inner bark, which is the actual living phloem. If you've ever peeled bark away from a tree, the tree will actually, if you get into the living phloem, you'll make it bleed. Okay, and then the last layer is the outer bark. This is the cork cells. These are to protect the cells inside. The whole purpose of bark on a tree is to protect the phloem and the xylem that are active from being damaged. That's why if you've ever taken a tree, and trees when they're first planted, a lot of times they'll tie them, they'll stake them. So they'll put a stake on both sides of the tree, and they'll tie it with a rope or a piece of rubber or something like that. If you let that go too long, what will happen is the tree grows, it can actually constrict that rubber or whatever you have around if it's not allowed to breathe and move, it will constrict, and it can actually cut or constrict the living phloem, the cambium, even down into the xylem, to a point where the tree literally suffocates. It's not able to get sugar and nutrients down from its leaves to the stem and roots, and it's not able to get water and minerals up to the leaves to do photosynthesis and those things. So woody stems, the big important thing about this is realizing that, hey, it's made of many layers. There are many layers of xylem and phloem that make up what we consider a tree. The last organ we're going to talk about is the leaves. So we have the roots, the stems, and we come to the leaves. The leaves' main purpose is to capture and use the sun's energy, of course we know, right, through the process of photosynthesis. So capture and use the sun's energy to make food. That is the big thing. And the process that it's going to use is photosynthesis. Now, we've talked about photosynthesis. I'm not going to go into a great review of photosynthesis, but I do want you to understand and see the structural variation that you'll see in the typical leaf. This is a cross-section of a leaf. Now, we've looked at leaves in class. These are the layers that you'd expect to see in leaves. They're very complex, actually. The top layer, the outside layer, is the cuticle. This is a waterproof coating that we've talked about. The purpose of the cuticle is to control water loss. Okay, it's to keep water from being lost from the plant, and it also waterproofs the plant as well on the outside. Then they have these surface cells. Okay, these surface cells, their purpose is to actually excrete the cuticle for one. Below them, they'll have the upper leaf cells. Okay, a lot of times they'll call these the palisade mesophyll. It's another name for them. The purpose of the upper leaves, these are packed with chlorophyll. You will see lots and lots and lots of chlorophyll. And inside that chlorophyll, as represented by these little green guys, okay, are chloroplast. They're on the upper part of the leaf, which means they're obviously going to get the most sunlight and energy. Below them, there's the lower leaf cells. These are often called the spongy mesophyll. They're spaced out, and the reason why they're spaced out, why they have space here in between, is so that carbon dioxide can reach the cells for photosynthesis, and so oxygen can actually escape out of the air. And so they have these spaces in the spongy, that's why they call them spongy mesophyll, which allow the leaf to be able to really breathe. Running through the leaf, they would have vascular tissue, which would again be the xylem and the phloem, exactly like we've seen in the roots and in the stems. And as if you've ever looked at a leaf, those veins that you actually see, you're looking at the vascular tissue. It's more pronounced. There's usually a larger vascular structure that starts, and then it's got smaller branching structures coming off of it. And then on the very bottom of the leaf, you have another layer of surface cells. But these ones are a little bit different. They have some cells in them that are called stomata. Okay, stomata are these little tiny pores that basically allow the leaf, they can be opened or closed by cells known as guard cells, okay, which allow the leaf, okay, the plant, to determine when to open, when to close. And this literally controls carbon dioxide, oxygen, and water vapor. So it allows the plant to bring in carbon dioxide that it needs for photosynthesis, to excrete oxygen, which is a waste product of photosynthesis, and also to excrete water if it needs less water, if there's enough water coming into the plant. So that's the leaf. They're used to, ultimately, all of these structures have one purpose: to capture the sun's energy and make it into food through photosynthesis. And so those are the layers of the leaf. Now, a second thing that leaves are used for is to control water loss. This is the second we talked about. Now, I just kind of started with the stomata. Let's spend a little bit more time on it. Transpiration is a scientific term that means the process by which water evaporates from leaves. Okay, you can see here's an example of transpiration. Water comes in through the roots, it goes up into the plant to the leaf, and then it exits through evaporation out of the stomata. Here's a close-up of the stomata on the bottom of a leaf. The stomata, okay, actually can open or close, right, to slow down or speed up transpiration. And so it's a really cool process where God's put these little like doorways or windows that can be opened wide or closed shut when the leaf needs, more or less of any one substance. And of course, you can imagine on a hot day, what's going to happen? Those stomatas will close up so the leaf's not losing a lot of water. On a cooler day, maybe they'll open up as there's more water than they need, or maybe in drought conditions they'll close up. So pretty cool structure God's design. That is our video on WSQ on roots, stems, and leaves. I'm glad that you guys watched it all. I hope you paid attention, and make sure that you write your summary on haiku. Please, that summary needs to be 3 to 4 sentences, and please answer your questions, and I will see you guys in class. Good luck.